Okay, guys, we're going to start our conversation about the surface area of three-dimensional shapes. So if I have a rectangular prism, people often think about that. They often think about it as like a fish tank. That's a perfect example, one that has length and width and height. But we're going to talk specifically about surface area. So we want to know how much surface there is on the outside, not what fills it up, what makes up all the sides and the top and the bottom. And so a lot of people actually will take the shape apart and kind of make it like a net. So hang on. So they might have something that looks like this. So from that picture, you can have, this might be the length. This would be the width. And this part would be the height. And there's really a formula that we use to be able to do that. So to do surface area, I will use the formula 2 length times width, because that means that there are 2 of these that would be kind of the bottom and the top areas in your shape. And then I'm going to do 2 length times height. So if I did length times height, that would kind of like be the front of the box and the back of the box. And then I would do 2 width times height. And they would be the 2 ends of the boxes. So this rectangle here and this rectangle. So to do the surface area, I kind of have to follow this formula. So let me put some numbers on these so you can take a look. So let's say that our length is 5 meters, our width is 2 meters, and our height is 7 meters. So now what I have to be able to do is actually to plug those in. So if I do the first one, 2, the length is 5, and the width is 2. So I'm just plugging those numbers in there where they go. If I do plus 2, then length would be 5, and height would be 7. So I'm just plugging those numbers in. Then the width is 2, and the height is 7. So I'm just plugging those in. Now, this becomes a little bit of a math problem. So each of these little pieces, I'm going to have to multiply together. So 2 times 5 times 2, this is going to be 20. Then 2 times 5 times 7 is going to be 70. Then this one, 2 times 2 times 7 is going to be 28. So I'm going to total all these up. So 20 and 70 and 28 is going to be 118. Now, remember, just like we were doing area, we have to make sure that we use our units. So if up here these are meters, if it's area, it's going to be meters squared. Okay, so like this picture I have here, if I add it up, all these sides together, that's really what the surface area is. So we have to follow that formula. Okay, now cube, same thing. I'm still going to have length, width, and height. Okay, so if I go ahead and get let me get a picture of that taken apart. So here's what that looks like if it were taken apart. Now remember, if it's a cube, all the sides are the same. So your length, your width, and the height are all the same. But the good news is we're going to use that same formula. So the surface area is 2 times your length and width. And then 2, your length and height, and 2, your width and height. The only good news is they happen to all be the same number. So let's say that we know that this is 8 millimeters. That means that every single one of these has to be the same. So this one's going to have to be 8 millimeters, and so is this. So when I plug them in, all of the variables that we have are going to be 8. So actually a little bit easier compared to what we did before. Okay, now we need to multiply these together. The good news is, though, once I get what the number is, like this is going to be 128, I know that these are all also going to be the same. So that means the surface area for this one is going to be 384. And if these are all millimeters up here, then this is going to be millimeters squared. Now, those are the only two shapes that you're going to see that you're actually going to be dealing with surface area. Okay, so the last piece we have is volume. So for volume with these, the good news is for both of these two-dimensional shapes we're going to look at, same shape, still this rectangular prism, but to do your volume, it's just going to be length times width times height. It's going to be very straightforward. So on this, if this is 12 miles, this is 4 miles, and this is 7 miles, to find the volume, I would just multiply them all together. So 12 times 4 times 7. Which will give you 336. Now, here's the part you need to remember. This is miles, this is miles, and this is miles. So there's 3 of them. So it's going to be miles cubed. That's the big change for volume. Okay, same kind of idea when we deal with a cube. It's going to be that same formula. But the only thing different is if it's a cube, you know that one side is the same length for all of them. So let's say this is 7 yards, and that's the only one they tell you. You have to know that all the rest of them are also going to be 7 yards. So 7 times 7 times 7. So that's going to be 343. And if I look back, I have yards and yards and yards. It's going to be yards cubed.